Donald Trump is fighting everyone. He's fighting Congress, he's fighting federal agencies, he's fighting parts of his own cabinet, and now, increasingly, he's fighting his own vice president. At the center of this latest internal war is foreign policy, specifically the growing possibility of U.S. military action against Iran. What makes this fight different from Trump's usual chaos is not just the issue itself, but who is pushing back: JD Vance. For the first time since joining the ticket, Vance is no longer quietly nodding along. He's leaking, he's signaling, he's drawing lines, carefully, strategically, and just indirectly enough to avoid open rebellion. But make no mistake, this is a real rupture, and it tells us a lot about where the Trump movement is headed and who is already planning for life after Trump. To understand why this matters, we need to start with Trump himself and the moment that lit the fuse. At a recent public appearance, Trump was asked about Iran and whether diplomacy was still on the table. What followed was classic Trump, rambling, contradictory, confident, and deeply revealing. He claimed Iran had called him. He said negotiations were underway. He suggested a meeting was being set up. Then he pivoted, hinting that military action might happen before any talks could take place. In a matter of seconds, Trump managed to suggest diplomacy, threaten force, and imply urgency without clarifying any actual strategy. It was foreign policy by improvisation. What stood out wasn't just the confusion, it was the tone. Trump spoke about Iran as if they were desperate, beaten down, and afraid. He implied leverage. He implied dominance. He implied force. And that's notable because this is language Trump almost never uses when discussing certain other authoritarian leaders. He doesn't talk this way about Vladimir Putin. He doesn't threaten Putin with fear or force. He doesn't suggest Putin is tired of being beaten. But Iran? Tariffs, threats, military options on the table. This contrast isn't accidental. It reflects Trump's worldview, one where aggression is selectively applied and moral clarity is absent. And it immediately created tension inside the administration. The White House press operation was left scrambling. In the hours that followed, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt attempted to clean up the mess. She emphasized that Trump keeps all options on the table, insisted diplomacy is the first choice, but reassured reporters that military action is always available. The problem? Even she didn't seem sure what policy she was defending. Was there a meeting? Who initiated contact? Who would attend? What timeline was being discussed? The answers were vague, circular, and inconsistent. At one point, she was reduced to saying, essentially, "What else do you want me to explain?" That's never a good sign. But the confusion didn't stop there. When pressed about Trump's repeated attacks on the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell, another institutional target, Leavitt again refused to draw clear boundaries, suggesting that while Trump hadn't ordered investigations, the Justice Department might look into things anyway. In other words, nothing is off the table, no guardrails are firm, and nobody seems fully in control. And that environment is exactly what has JD Vance worried. Because Vance's political future depends on one thing above all else: plausibility. JD Vance has spent years trying to reinvent himself, not just as a Trump ally, but as the face of a new Republican Party, a party that claims to be skeptical of foreign wars, hostile to the military-industrial complex, and focused on domestic priorities. That image wasn't accidental, it was strategic. In 2024, Vance worked hard to brand the ticket as "No New Wars." He positioned Democrats, and especially Kamala Harris, as the party of endless intervention, claiming they were backed by neoconservatives and former Bush-era figures because they wanted more conflict abroad. The message was simple: Trump and Vance, nas peace through restraint. Democrats, war and profiteering. It wasn't entirely honest, but it was effective messaging. Now, that narrative is collapsing. Trump has floated expanding military budgets. He has escalated rhetoric toward Iran. He has openly entertained strikes before diplomacy. And suddenly, JD Vance's carefully crafted image is in jeopardy. That's why the Wall Street Journal report matters so much. According to the Journal, Vance is leading an internal push urging Trump to give diplomacy with Iran a real chance before any military action. Officials quoted in the report suggest Trump is leaning towards strikes, possibly even striking first and negotiating later. That is a complete inversion of the no new wars promise. And the fact that this disagreement became public tells us everything we need to know. JD Vance didn't accidentally let this leak. This is positioning. Normally, Vance would stay quiet. He's not known for defying Trump openly, but this time is different. The issue is too central to his future ambitions, especially with 2028 looming. Vance knows that the Republican base is deeply conflicted about foreign intervention, while hawks like Lindsey Graham are still calling for confrontation and even regime change. A large portion of MAGA voters are exhausted by endless wars and skeptical of military adventures. That tension is growing, and Vance is trying to stand on the right side of it. That's also why voices like Lindsey Graham matter here. Graham has been one of the loudest proponents of aggressive action, framing U.S. involvement as a moral duty and openly pushing Trump toward confrontation. These are the same voices Trump still listens to, despite years of claiming he rejects neoconservatism. This is the contradiction at the heart of Trumpism. It claims to be anti-interventionist, but it surrounds itself with interventionists. It promises restraint, but governs through escalation. Trump's record makes this unavoidable. Despite the branding, his administration dropped more bombs in its first year than any previous president. Military force expanded quietly, without formal declarations or public debate. So when JD Vance tries to resurrect the "America first means peace" argument, reality keeps getting in the way. That's why he's leaking. He can't publicly oppose Trump, that would end his career, but he can create distance. He can signal disagreement. He can ensure that when history or voters look back, there's a record showing he pushed diplomacy. This is political self-preservation. We've seen this before. Earlier reports revealed that Vance privately criticized U.S. strikes on Houthi targets, calling them unnecessary and strategically foolish. That comment leaked too, not by accident, but by design. Vance is learning how to communicate dissent without rebellion, and this strategy is likely to spread. As Trump becomes more erratic, more aggressive, and more isolated, Republicans are beginning to think about survival, not loyalty, survival. That's especially true heading into the midterms. Many Republicans expect electoral losses. When that happens, the question won't be whether Trump remains dominant. It will be what comes next. And that's where the ideological cracks will widen. Is the party truly anti-intervention? Or was that just a slogan? Does America first mean restraint or unilateral force? Those questions are coming, and the party isn't prepared to answer them. JD Vance is trying to get ahead of that reckoning. Meanwhile, others are pushing back more directly. On the Senate floor, Mark Kelly delivered a forceful rebuke of what he sees as lawless governance and militarized decision-making. His remarks weren't just about one policy, they were about constitutional norms, separation of powers, and the danger of executives acting without accountability. Kelly's decision to pursue legal action against the Secretary of Defense underscores how deep this conflict runs. This isn't just political disagreement anymore, it's institutional resistance. And that's what makes this moment so significant. Trump's instinct is always escalation. When challenged, he pushes harder. When restrained, he lashes out. That approach works in rallies, it works on social media, but it creates instability in governance and fractures coalitions. JD Vance sees that. He sees that Trump's path leads to chaos, electoral backlash, and internal collapse. And while he won't say it publicly, his actions suggest he's preparing for a future where Trump is no longer the center of gravity. That doesn't make Vance principled. It makes him strategic. He's not opposing Trump to stop war. He's opposing Trump to save himself. And that's exactly why this fight matters. Because it shows that Trump's grip is weakening, not all at once, not dramatically, but incrementally. Through leaks, through distance, through quiet dissent? Republicans aren't ready to break with Trump, but they are ready to hedge. As foreign policy grows more volatile and Trump leans further into confrontation, those hedges will become more visible. The party is heading toward a civil war, not between left and right, but between loyalty and reality. And JD Vance is standing right in the middle, trying to survive the blast radius. That, more than any single policy dispute, tells us what the future of the Republican Party really looks like: fractured, defensive, and quietly at war with itself.